The Raptors get a win once again over the New York Knicks, 125-116. That's 3 out of 4 against the Knicks, and just in time for a big road trip coming up. Welcome to Raptors Today, the show after Raptors Tonight. I'm Randy Urban, filling in for Akil Augustine, who's working on his jump shot.
When do we get couldn't help himself.
Paul Jones, Sherman Hamilton.
Raptors right now.
Raptors right now. We should have Raptors afternoon. Buenas tardes. Give me some Spanish, sure. You got any Spanish for me?
I got none.
All right. Today's. Yeah, third quarter wasn't great for the Raptors last night against the Knicks, but they changed the momentum in the fourth quarter. What did you guys see that was key to that shift?
For me, the start of the fourth quarter, they were up, 7.5, and our guy, John Russin, puts out his graphics package every day for the game, and I saw the one stat where the Raptors were being on average outscored by 8 to 9 points in the second half. And I looked and I went, up 7, maybe it was a Boston game. If you're outscored by that margin second half, you're going to lose the game. And it happened in the third quarter. I thought the start of the fourth quarter, though, when Nick rested Pascal and Fred, we know in the start of the fourth quarter, your bench has to do some work. And he had a hybrid lineup out there. He had 3 starters out there, and I think Boucher was one of the guys out there, and I think Juancho might have been the other one. And they go on a 13-2 run before New York calls the first timeout. New York had no turnovers in the third quarter, but they forced them into 2 turnovers, scored 5 points. New York was 1 of 5 with 2 turnovers. Toronto was making shots. They jumped in front there. And then it was, for Nick, it was like, okay, well, how long do I ride this hybrid unit with a couple bench guys and leave 2 of my better players on the bench? And that lead just kept going. And I don't think he put them back in until 4 minutes to go in the game. So that started the fourth quarter, that unit that was out there and the energy and the way they were playing, that made, to me, that turned the game.
And then it becomes demoralizing, right, Sherm? Because you're playing, if you're the Knicks, you're playing catch-up all game long, and then they make that little run, and then you're like, okay, I got to do this again, which, time's running out, energy's running out, difficult to do.
Yeah, well, the Knicks, they're a pretty good first quarter team. They're like a +2 to 3 point first quarter team. Fourth quarters, though, they're in the minus. Yeah. So this is not something that is unusual for the Knicks to give up fourth quarters. I thought the way the Raptors did it, though, with that second unit, it was very impressive. I thought those guys answered the call beginning of the second quarter and the fourth quarter. And to see, Gary Trent get loose with that second group and kind of get his offensive game going, because this is kind of what they tried earlier in the season. Gary Trent coming off the bench with that second unit. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. And it kind of worked because he did score, but now we're seeing a totally different hybrid of it based on him starting and then playing with the second unit. So, and they did it on the defensive end, too. That's what was impressive. They scored, but defensively, they made it really, really tough for the Knicks.
Yeah.
And that's the element that I feel, regardless of what's happening on the offensive end, if you can get stops, you can stay in games. And I thought they got stops and they were able to offensively do a lot of damage. So it was good to see, especially after what happened against Boston the night before. So to see the confidence in that second unit to get it going. And listen, Precious Achiuwa,
I love what he's doing since he's come back.
Next level basketball in his role. We're talking about being the most efficient in your role. He's doing a great job.
Midway through the third quarter, Precious had not taken a 3-point shot. You get sometimes he looks like I got to get one up here, or it's my turn, or I didn't see any of that. He's just his role as a starter the last couple of games, and I don't know if he even ended up with a 3-point shot. There was one where he caught it in the corner. I thought, he's going to take it. Put it on the ground, punch, dribble, kick it. And to Sherm's point about Gary in that second unit, they were actively looking for him. There was one time Scotty brought the ball up, and Gary was in front of the Knicks bench, and he was like, Precious, go get him. Go. And then New York blew up that action. Scotty passed it, and Juancho was like, okay, go get Gary, get Gary. They were actively trying to feature him in that part of the game.
And speaking of Gary, he's been great the last 10 games, so consistent. It feels like when he had any kind of daylight last night, he was making threes, made 6 threes. this season would be completely different if the team had a few more of those where the shots that you think should go in. Actually, they've been just struggling to shoot the three. But what have you guys seen from Trent that's made this consistency possible?
Well, to your point about seeing those shots go in, when the Raptors weren't shooting the ball well, they were getting good looks.
Yeah.
So when people were complaining about this team can't make threes, I'm like, yeah, we've seen them make threes before. It's if they're turning down looks or if they're taking a lot of contested threes. That wasn't happening. They just weren't making them. But Gary's been phenomenal. I mean, beyond just the shot making, which he's doing a great job of, usually when guys offensively get it going, you find that defensively, maybe they wander a bit. There's energy for one end of the floor, and if it's offense, it's not going to be there defensively. He's giving it to you on both ends of the floor. He's not taking bad shots, and I also like the fact that he's just not shooting threes to get his buckets.
Exactly.
He's putting the ball on the floor, and he just does a great job of staying on balance and creating space when he gets to his mid-range or attacking the basket. So he's just hitting from all levels, and like a smart team will do, they'll get you the ball when you start to flow.
Yeah. I like the diversity of his scoring. I wonder how many dunks he's had in the last 2 or 3 games, right? Because we're so used to Gary catching, shooting, coming off screens. As Sherm says, the calm, you're not speeding me up, sidestep dribble to a jump stop and knocking down shots. But I'm seeing him going to the basket. I'm seeing dunks. I'm seeing a lot of that. And then at the defensive end, I don't know if the rest of the league still hasn't caught on. The kind of guys dribbling the ball and playing with the ball in front of them, bang, it's gone. It's like the frog tongue, like bang, like there it goes. And now the ball's loose, and you're chasing it down. And he's been a big part of that.
Yeah,
he had a great steal on Jaylen Brown against Boston. Jaylen Brown squared him up and tried to sweep through. Gary stopped it. He tried to rip through stronger, and Gary got his hand on the ball.
Yeah, didn't let
go and forced Jaylen Brown to trip over himself, fall down, created a turnover. That's a hard steal to actually create, but he's so good with his hands, and his timing and his instinct defensively is so good. And I'm just glad that even though his offense is off the charts right now, his defense hasn't slipped at all.
It's funny, though, you talk about not turning down shots. And, when you cultivate an open shot, and you get somebody wide open and he doesn't make it, there's this oh, man, and that can kind of pile up. And we didn't see that last night. And you don't see that from Gary very often.
At this level, we're getting close to March.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that makes March Madness great.
Right.
Because a kid gets an open shot and you're like, oh, let's see if it goes in.
Yeah.
At this level, when you're right, it's demoralizing because when guys get wide open practice shots like that, you expect it to go down. And last night, when Gary shot the ball, I just expected it to go in.
Yeah, he has that kind of form
and
too,
it's
right?
Calm,
it feels good.
And it's like he's in the gym by himself with 20,000 people around, and it's calm and it's
a great
measured,
point. It is calm,
and it's like, oh, that didn't go in. Like, how did that not go in?
Yeah,
that's the feeling he's given me.
Well, it was going in a lot in that first quarter. The Raptors put up 37 points to the Knicks 22, a 15-point lead, and Savannah Hamilton was there, and she's going to talk about the scorching hot start in the first quarter.
Thanks, Randy, and what a game it was here in Scotiabank Arena for the Raptors getting that win over the Knicks, but you have to attribute that tone set early in the first quarter by especially Fred VanVleet, who, he had 14 points. He was determined to come out strong, despite the fact that they were double-teaming him sometimes on the wing, which is rightfully so because Fred dropped 33 points on their head top last time they were in New York in the Garden, so of course they want to come out strong against him the way that the Raptors came out strong against Julius Randle in the first quarter as well. Because Julius, last time he was here at Scotiabank Arena in the first quarter, he had a shooting fest against the Raptors too. So of course they wanted to contain him, and they were pretty successful because they also forced the Knicks to 6 turnovers while the Raptors only had 2. Now we also have to give some credit, that maybe the cherry on top in this one, to Gary Trent Jr. because he was 3 for 3 from the three-point line. And of course that set the tone going into the second and throughout the rest of the game, which I'm sure you guys have dived into and will continue to do. Randy?
All right, thanks, Savannah, for that. Let's talk a little bit about Fred VanVleet because this is 4 games in a row against the Knicks this season that he's been hot. 28, 33, and 28 in the 4 games. What do you make of that? Is this just like, I like the matchup?
Yeah, and this is something that when you play the game, you kind of understand. There are certain gyms, there are certain uniforms, there are certain guys that you get a little gassed up to when you see them, right? You go into a certain gym or a certain building, I like this place, or you see a certain team, like I play well against these guys, and it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think we're seeing this with Fred, and New York, and there's a challenge there with Jalen Brunson.
Right. This is another guy that's, a small guard, kind of the same type of player as Fred. And
I got the catalog. Let me show you how it's done, right?
Yeah. I just got paid.
That's right. That's right.
Who's up to be paid?
Yeah, I know. That's
like there's all
you paid him that much.
Factors
Look at
in.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of dynamics in this matchup. I mean, even with Jalen Brunson, he's got some of Fred's game. They've got that small change of pace, play angles, real explosive at times, can shoot it, can get to the paint, finish tough shots.
I'm not doing it above the rim at any point.
There's a lot of similarities in their game. Different players, they get it done differently, but you can see some similarities. And the bet on yourself, man, is always going to try and make a point in those scenarios. But it's not like it's just been the Knicks. Fred has been he's been really good. Really, really good. So to see it just continue, but yeah, he's had the Knicks number, and I like that matchup between him and Brunson. It's such a cerebral, highly skilled matchup that you got to appreciate the counters, the attacks, the different reads, and the way that both these guys approach a game. And Fred is, I mean, he's on another level right now.
This is what is so interesting, and you guys can talk about this in depth, because I think people don't understand how good you have to be as a basketball player to get to the NBA at that height, right? Like there's nothing given to you, right? It's a big man's game, and you have these guys that have to put together these supreme offensive packages. They have to be ferocious defensively. It's tough out there for these guys. How skilled are they?
People have no idea how skilled they are. I mean, it manifests itself with their peers also. A guy like Fred, or when we saw Kyle here, a little guy will make a play, and some of the big guys, like they don't throw the accolades and the flowers at him right then, but you can tell they're running back going, man, that was a tough shot, that was a big play, like how, and so the skill level combined with, as you said, the ferocity, the heart, the intelligence. All of those things, there's very little room for error.
Well, do you know how many 6-foot guards there are playing basketball?
Well, let's take it a step further. 6-foot or smaller guards that aren't uber quick, aren't freak athletes like Nate Robinson or anything like that. Like you look at Jalen Brunson and Fred VanVleet, you're not saying these guys are speedy. You're not saying these guys can get off the ground and elevate and play above the rim.
So funny, yeah.
They are neck up players.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at that size with that limited athletic ability, the mental acuity that they have for the game is so high. It's extremely high. And to your point about how hard it is to make it to the NBA, well, that size, the benefit is they've carried it their whole life. So they've had reps and reps and reps of figuring it out. And when they get to this level, it's because they are the elite of the elite at that size. And just to me, it's more of how intellectual they are about the game. Yeah, they got the skill and the handle and the shot and the playmaking ability, but their mind for the game of basketball is superior, especially at that size.
Understanding what they can and can't do and who's with them and what other guys can do and how they get an advantage. I always defer and go back to, and to me, maybe the greatest little man in the game. He was a great player, period. But I look at Isaiah Thomas, Isaiah Lord Thomas, the Pistons Hall of Famer, and the way he played that game also in that era. But he had some of the things that Sherm was talking about. He was extremely quick, but his skill level, like the things that he did on the floor, and that to me that became the template. Actually, I go back.
Is his middle name Lord?
Yeah. I go back to Tiny Archibald, to Nate Archibald in my era.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say.
And then I look at Isaiah and guys like that taking it forward.
And quickly, remember, the point guard position is now a multifaceted scoring position.
Yeah.
It used to be set it up and run the offense and pass the ball. Now, you got to be able to go get it. And at that size, to be able to go get it, and that's why Isaiah, neck up, brilliant.
The last guy
physically brilliant.
The last guy to lead the NBA in scoring and assists in the same year, I believe, was Nate Archibald.
Wow. And Lord, tough name to live up to, and maybe he did it. I don't know. All right, it's time to hear from the guys that actually played the game. Let's hear the players talk about what happened against the Knicks.
Those first 9 minutes of the fourth quarter every night now.
That was great. It was great. I thought they were going to run the table there. But, yeah, those guys, they got us a lead. They played really well to start the fourth. And, ultimately that was the difference in the game. It was back and forth a little bit there. And they were able to get us some separation. So that lineup, was a big reason why we won the game.
What did you like about the ways that you guys were able to establish yourselves early?
I thought we were just sharp and, assertive. And I think, our first quarter was our best defensive quarter, obviously. They scored 30, I think, apiece after that. So it was a little tough. But, I thought we just came out with a good focus and intensity. And, we got to find ways to increase that consistently throughout the game. But for the most part, I thought we were, pretty sharp and pretty together tonight.
Scotty's had some big fourth quarters recently. What does it say about a player like that, especially at his age, to be at his best later in games?
He's a good player. He's a good player. I think he's finding a pace and a rhythm and just finding his spots and, not checking out when, he's got the dry spells and just finding ways to be assertive. So he's kind of calculating and seeing, where he can attack. And we know that that's an option we can always go to. And, coaches tonight, gave him the lineup there in the fourth. And he was able to capitalize and run the show. And he's continued to grow as a player. And sky's the limit, obviously.
What does Precious bring to that first unit from a defensive standpoint?
His defensive rebounding, he can guard 1 through 5, being able to switch on the guards, being able to rebound with the bigs. I think it's just a big force for us. And when he plays with that intensity and that effort on the defensive end, he's probably one of the best defenders in the league when he's engaged and locked in and playing fast and strong. So that's an incredible asset to have on the defensive end.
I'm gonna say it's coming easier to me with time. I think I've always been able to do that. Just found something and stuck with it, and it was just working. So why not go back to it? I think that's just being smart and having basketball IQ. You see something work, just keep attacking it and keep doing the same thing.
What do you think of that group that finished the 9 minutes of the fourth there?
That was a solid group. I felt like it was all just trying to play hard, trying to get stops. Was communicating pretty good in the zone that we were running. And then we was just going on the other end, and everybody was doing what they needed to do. So it worked out for us pretty good.
Is it a little easier when they're just really two sort of, like, it was just you and Gary were kind of running the offense mostly, and then the other three were just sort of filling the gaps? And is it easier that way? I mean, than playing sometimes with all 5 starters?
No, I wouldn't say that. It wasn't really just filling in the role. I felt like everybody was doing a really big part. Precious was setting great screens, rolling to the basket. Told Juancho, like, come on, let's pick it up. But Juancho, they was doing solid. I wouldn't say it was easier, but everybody just did what they had to do in that moment.
That touchdown pass to Gary, did you think Fournier was going to be able to get to it at the end?
No. I saw him all the way on the left side, and he was running back, so I just threw it full speed, and he caught the ball. He went out to play, and my boy Gary got on the rim.
All right, thanks, Scotty, and thanks, Fred. Insightful stuff, as usual. Let's change gears and go a little bit NBA news. You guys saw what Stan Van Gundy tweeted. Let's read it first of all here. He last week, he said 90s NBA teams had just a trainer and a strength coach. They practiced more often and harder and played more back-to-backs. Teams now have huge medical performance staffs and value rest over practice, yet injuries and games missed are way up. Something's not working.
The way you
here.
started with the 90s, the way you said 90s, I thought we were going to get a full
impression.
Stan Van Gundy. 90s, the
Give
NBA teams. Stan, by the way, if you're not following him on social media, on Twitter, He is one of the great follows for basketball
And life.
and life
Yep.
and social reasons. Yeah. I heard what Stan said. That's something we've been throwing around. And one of the popular sentiments is there's a lot more workouts, but there's not a lot of basketball playing. Like workouts are more controlled, and you don't have those sometimes abrupt or movements that are spontaneous in a game that sometimes you tweak something. I talked to Billy Wennington from the Bulls, former NBA champion. He says, I don't see a lot of guys playing basketball in the summer. They're working out and they're training with their trainers, but they're not working out. And then he says, back in the day, people were on us for the length of training camps and two-a-days, but we got used to the grind and we played basketball. And now with the collective agreement and some limitations, so maybe that's why we're getting some of these injuries early on. There's so many theories out there, but I think Stan's point is right. Something's not working.
Yeah, and it's kind of the evolution of it, right? Science and technology evolves. They find new information that possibly players in the 90s and earlier, if they had this information, they might not have done what they did to stay in the NBA or to play. But now financially, if those players in the 90s had what these players had, who knows if their decision.
Well, is the average career longer now?
Well, I don't know, but I know the money is longer.
Oh, yeah.
Much longer.
Yeah.
So when you factor that into, and, everybody's a brand now, you're a corporation, it's a totally different approach to how you want to establish yourself and maintain yourself over the years in the NBA. The other thing that I don't think people are talking about is during COVID, schedules, routines, workouts, everything was shifted.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much that plays into it as well. Now, getting back to more of the consistent kind of repetitious stuff that everyone's used to, how much did those 2.5 years impact players in terms of how their bodies would react to their normal routines over time, and now getting back into it, maybe that could play a role as well.
But I'll be the old guy yelling at the clouds, but they also played hurt more often.
Well, and I was going to say that to your point.
They had to,
yeah.
For the money, right? And
but is that smart? Sorry, Jonesy.
No,
is that smart though?
But here's the question I'm going to throw to both of you.
I came here and I wasn't feeling great this morning. I mean, I'm doing it.
But the smart part of it comes in for you especially.
People talked about
Take it easy, O'Neal.
Michael Jordan, right? LeBron is close to breaking Kareem's all-time record. And in the late 70s and early 80s, Kareem got into yoga, something that is really popular now, but everybody looked at him like he was going sideways, something to extend his career. One of these older players said to me about a week ago, what if Michael had the technology, the science, all of that? Because we're looking at LeBron about to break an all-time record. They said, Michael wore it as a badge of honor to go out there every night. He sometimes went into games against minutes restrictions. And then he practiced maybe harder than he played and pushed his teammates to practice like that because he set the tone. So like this guy's point was, could you imagine him in this era with all the and if he was able to still not have that attitude compromised, like you said, back in the night, what would it be like? What would it be like?
I heard Michael, did he lift for 90 minutes, 2 hours before every game?
Well, he had the
Like on
breakfast
game
club,
days?
right? He had the Breakfast Club where they would go, Jordan, Pippen, Ron Harper, all these guys would go and lift early in the morning all the time. And he was tired of getting beat up by Detroit. And he was like, no, this isn't going to happen anymore.
Yeah. All right, from one coach's sound to another, let's hear from Nick Nurse on how the game went against the Knicks.
Yeah, it was great. I think that was a long stretch for those guys. And I think they were working really hard. We're playing zone most of the quarter, but they were really working hard to figure out all the different formations that were coming at them. Did a great job on the glass at both ends. Really, lots of offensive rebounds. Really, no offensive rebounds for them. And then I thought they really were in a good groove. Gary was providing offense. Scotty was providing offense like those two guys should. And Chris and Precious were kind of cleaning up, any misses. So it was a heck of a long stretch for those guys. Good.
You weren't out in transition. It seemed like Scotty was either dissecting the defense or sort of using his brute force, kind of. Was that like the mix that you look for from him sometimes?
Well, what I thought was he did a lot more, again, quicker decision making. Even when we threw him on the post there a couple times in a row, he just caught it and spun to the, made it and dumped it off, quickly. Like, I think that playing, once he catches it, like on the catch or just after the catch, a little bit obviously should give you a little more space to play in and not such a loaded up defense, right? So I think he did a good job of just making good decisions, and he really did a good job of, as he was coming up the floor and we didn't have any transition, he was directing traffic and getting guys to screen for Gary coming off, and those guys were running a little, three-man game kind of. Sometimes it was a shot and play for Gary. Sometimes Gary'd pitch it back to Scotty, and he'd turn the corner going the other way. So that was good organization by him too.
Going back to that group that you started the fourth with and stayed right till 3 minutes, I guess. Was it the work on the boards that allowed you to stay with that group so long?
I think so. I think that, again, I'm just looking. I believe they had 10 offensive rebounds at halftime and ended up with 14. So that we were doing a good job of finally getting that under control. And we end up with 17 offensive rebounds, and those are at the offensive end. Those are such big, important plays because they're, I call them high spirit plays. You miss a shot and you think, oh, and then all of a sudden you're sticking it back in, and you're like, it just changes the feel of the whole possession, and I think energizes you for the one running back the other way, and then obviously they got to take it out. So. Those guys I thought they just made really good decisions, both sides of the ball. They were flying around in the zone for the most part, and they were flying around in offense and moving it and taking what was there and cleaning up some of the misses.
All right, it's part of the show I've been looking forward to all night. Couldn't sleep. It's Never Have I Ever Basketball Edition. Give the audience a chance to get to know Sherman O'Neal Hamilton a little bit more.
Is that a real show?
It's a little it's a segment, I think, that's on the TikTok. I don't know. What's your middle name?
Desmond.
Paul Desmond Jones.
What's
all right.
your middle name?
Doesn't matter. Randall Herbert Urban.
Herbert.
Herbert. Never have I ever hit a game winner. Go.
I have.
Of course you have.
My last year in university, it was one of those games where the player of the year in the country, who happened to be my roommate, was homesick. And just meant more shots for me, and I hit one at the buzzer.
Nice. I like that.
Yes.
Sherm? Yeah?
Multiple times.
Yes. Were you the guy in the court counting it down? Everybody
I've been
was.
in that situation quite a few times, yes.
Yeah. All right. If you're not asking, I hit one on Raptors tonight when Leo was talking trash to me.
I hit one on Friday.
I hit one at Launchpad. Yeah, I hit one at Launchpad about 2 years ago. It was a game winner, and then
you were playing against 10-year-olds.
Never have I ever got ejected.
You know how he said multiple times?
Yeah.
Game winners.
Really?
Multiple times.
Like.
I was a terrible guy when it came to that.
Like 5 fouls or.
5 fouls.
Throwing at talking.
Understand? Actually, I was my prize ejection was being thrown out on my second technical after telling the referee that he had the wrong rule, and I was correct. I'll leave it at that. More details on the YouTube version that comes.
Right.
Never been ejected. Have come close multiple times.
Yeah.
Threatened refs.
With hugs?
Hugs that were violent, yes.
Never have I ever airballed a free throw. That's none of us here.
No.
Of course.
No.
You have?
I've airballed a free throw.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, when... What? How old were you? 8, 7 when you couldn't get it to the 10-foot net?
No. In high school, I've airballed.
Really?
In a dome, like a different setting? It was one of those?
No, in a game.
Yeah.
But you have a nice jump shot. How could you ever airball a free throw?
Because perfection is just left for you.
Well, you're starting to see the light. Never have I ever made a prediction on air that turned out right.
Never have I?
Have you ever? Just basically, have you?
Yeah.
Yes.
You've made a prediction?
I made a prediction about Klay Thompson being the steal of his draft.
You did?
Yeah.
Wow. That's big.
Yeah.
And Jonesy, what was...
I remember the first year, one of the first years I was getting into TV.
Yeah.
Seattle, the Supersonics were a team that was favored in the playoff series, and I looked at them and I said, there's no way they win that 5-game series, and they lost in 3 straight.
Wow.
So
I took the Warriors last year to win it back
I've
in
been
December.
wrong way more.
Way too much, like a lot today.
I've predicted a lot of wrong things over
Yeah,
my career.
yeah.
but I've gotten a few right.
All right.
Herbert,
we've all had
So
the
it's
march.
my dad's name. What do you make it?
No, it's
You
your
want to
middle
fight him?
name. I'm giving you respect. I didn't know that. Found out earlier.
Yeah, you like it?
I do.
Okay, you can call me Herbert from now
I
on.
will.
Wait a minute, that's a disrespect to your dad, though, isn't it?
Well,
Like he's the
he doesn't
original.
even. He calls me. I was
He's
named
the
Randall. He doesn't even call me Randall.
I call you Randall.
You call me Randall. He calls me Randy.
Mama called him Clay.
He calls me He just goes, "What up, man?" That's what my dad says. Because you're the man. All right, we've run out of time. Unfortunately, I am back tomorrow, sitting in this chair for Paul Jones, for Sherman Hamilton, Paul Jones. I'm Randy Urban. Thank you for
Herbert.
watching Raptors Today, the show after Raptors Tonight. Good night.